All right, it's now your turn to get a little practice creating tables and working with column constraints. So I'd like you to define a table called employees, and it should have the following columns: ID, last name, first name, middle name, age, and current status. So ID should be a primary key, it should be an integer, and it should automatically increment. Last name, first name, and middle name are all text, but last name and first name are mandatory, they're required, and middle name is not required. Not everybody has a middle name. Additionally, all these text columns that you see here, I didn't specify a size, but let's just say 100 characters for last name, first name, middle name, and current status. And then we have age. Age is also a number. We only know integer, so it's an integer for now, and it is required. And then current status would be, if the employee is currently employed by us, if they are a contractor, if they have been let go, if they're on, paid leave or something. But it is text. It is required. It's mandatory. It cannot be null. But it will have a default value of employed. Okay? So try making this and pause the video, please, so that you do it. And then I'll be back in 3, 2, 1 with a solution. Here we go. So we're going to define a table. I think I'm going to do this all in a file using one of my GUIs, like SQL Workbench. So I'm going to do a create table, employees, and I know that we have ID in here, and ID is going to be an integer, and I know that I want it to auto increment. So I can add that in. Just remember, it's auto underscore increment. And then I have to decide how I'm going to make it a primary key. Am I going to do this, which is fine, and that's probably what I prefer, or am I going to do it after the fact, like this, primary key, ID? I think it's better, in my opinion, just to do it when I'm creating and defining the column. So primary key. Remember, there's an underscore for auto increment. Primary key, though, there is not. Okay, then we have last name, first name, and middle name, all of which are varchars. They're text. So let's start with last name, varchar, and I said 100, I believe, but all that matters is that you pick some value that's consistent. I mean, I guess that's not all that matters. We don't want you to pick 5 characters, but we'll do last name, first name, middle name, just like that. Put my commas in there. But then we know that last name and first name are required, so we'll put in not null. Same thing here, not null. And then we have age, which is a required number. So age is an int, and it's also not null. And then finally, we have current status. So current status, which is a varchar 100, and it cannot be null. It's mandatory, so not null. And we have a default value of employed, right? Make sure, employed. Yep. Okay, so I think that should be it. We can always run this entire script, or I guess you could just copy and paste it over in your terminal, however you want to do this. I'm doing it on the Pet Shop database still. It doesn't matter because I'm going to drop the table at the end of this video. But let's make sure that it works. And also, here's my solution in this slide. I guess we should compare and make sure I didn't miss anything when typing this out. A semicolon, we should put that in there. But otherwise, it's the same, right? Current status, varchar 100, not null, default employed, primary key, auto increment, all that stuff is there. So we should be good. Let's just run this script. So in Workbench, in SQL Workbench or MySQL Workbench, I can run the entire script by clicking the lightning bolt. This entire file will run. Or if I have my cursor in some part of a single query or a single sort of unit of SQL, right, one command, what we'd call a query, I can use this other version here right next to the lightning bolt that will only run wherever my cursor is. So it doesn't matter because I have all this commented out anyway. But if I do want to do that, I'll run it there. We get a green check mark. Nothing went wrong as far as we can tell. I could always just refresh over here. I should have an employees table now. And if I look at it, I can see my values down here. But I'm going to head to my terminal, and I'm going to do a describe employees. and I'm too zoomed in for the size of this table. There we go. I zoomed out a bit, and now we can see all the different columns, their types, just int and varchars, and then if they can be null or not, and what our primary key is, and what the default values are, if there are any. And then lastly, auto increment. Okay, so let's try and just insert an employee. This is not part of the requirements at all for this exercise, but let's insert a new employee. So insert into employees, and let's say that I'm not going to insert the ID, right? We have auto increment, so no need to do that, but I'll do first name and last name and age, because those are the only ones required, right? First, last, and age. Current status has a default, so I'll rely on that default value. So then I'll do values here, and his name is Chicken Man, and that's his last name, obviously, and his age is 87. Thomas Chicken Man. All right, let's select star from employees and make sure we see current status has a default value of employed. Middle name is null because that's totally fine. That means this person doesn't have a middle name. Again, null is not always bad, or it's not necessarily bad. It's just a concept of no value, and many people will have no middle name, right? So we don't want to make it required. We don't want to have a default. I guess we could put a default in there, but why bother if null serves the purpose we need? Okay, let's just make sure that if I try and insert somebody, let's say missing an age, that we're going to have a problem. So let's get rid of age there, and then it's duplicated. That's fine. We'll have 2 Thomas Chicken Mans, but we get an error anyway saying age doesn't have a default value. You can't insert that. So it's working. Our auto increment is working. If I just insert another identical employee a couple of times, we should see, if I select star from employees, that we have ID of 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, so that's our little exercise for creating a table with all those different constraints, those little add-ons we saw. Auto increment, primary key, not null, and default. We use those all the time.